Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Good morning, Hare Krishna. Today we're going to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 45. That's 3, 5, 45. And I'll start with the Sanskrit, one word at a time. Tan,
Tam,
Vai,
Vai,
He,
He,
Asat,
Asat,
Vritti,
Prithvi,
Akshivi,
Akshivi,
Ye,
Ye,
Parahrita,
Parita,
Anta Manasa,
Antanasa,
Paresha,
Pravisha,
Ato,
Ato,
Na,
Na,
Pasyanti,
Pashyanti,
Urugaya,
Urvaya,
Nunam,
Nunam,
Ye,
Ye,
Te,
Te,
Padanyasa,
Paranyasa,
Vilasa,
Vilasa,
Lakshya.
Lakshyam.
Okay, now we'll chant the verses themselves. Tanvai asad vitibir akshibir ye.
Tanvayasha Vintivir Akshivir
Parahitantar manasa paresa.
Paravitanta Manasam Parisham
Ato napasyantyur rugaya nunam.
Ato Napashyam Jugaya
Yete padanyasa vilasa lakshya.
Yete Paranyasya Vilasya Laksham
Tanvai asad vitibir akshibir ye.
Tanvayasha Vintivir Akshivir
Paravritantar manasa paresa.
Paravitanta Manasam Parisham
Ato napasyanti urugaya nunam.
Ato Napashyam Jugaya
Yete padanyasa vilasa lakshya.
Yete Paranyasya Vilasya Laksham
Tanvai hirasad vitibir akshibir ye.
Tanvayasya Vintivir Akshivir
Parahritantar manasa paresa.
Alayamata Manasam Parisham
Ato napasyanti urugaya nunam.
Ato Napashyam Jugaya
Yete padanyasa vilasa lakshya.
Yete Paranyasya Vilasya Laksham. Yamida, you want to chant?
Tanve hi asyad vitabir akshat virhirya
Davayasya
Tanvai hirasad vitibir akshibir ye.
harirhatantar manasya pirasha
Paratitanta manasha paresha.
Atonam pastyanti ugaya nanam.
Ato napashyantu gayanunam.
Yete pandanyasya vai lasya lakshaya.
Yete paranyasya vilasya lakshya. Danvamya sadviti virakshi virye. Paravititanta manasta paresha. Ato napashyantu gayanunam. Yete padanyasa vilasa lakshya.
Would anyone else like to chant the verse, online or otherwise?
Tanvehi
Parahiritantar manasa paresha. Ato napasyanti urugayanunam.
Yete
Yete paranyasa vilasa lakshya.
Tanvaihya satvritti virakshibirye.
Tanvahiyasad virakshibirye.
Pararitantar manasa parisha.
Parahiritantar manasa paresha.
Ato napasyanti urugayanunam.
Ato napasyanti urugayanunam.
Yete patanyasa vilasa lakshya.
Yete paranyasa vilasa lakshya. Hare Krishna. Now we'll read the word for word translation. Tan,
Tan,
the lotus feet of the Lord.
the lotus feet of the Lord.
Vai,
Vai,
certainly.
certainly,
He,
he,
for.
for,
Asat,
asat,
materialistic.
materialistic,
Vritti be,
vritti be,
by those who are influenced by external energy.
by those who are influenced by external energy.
Akshi be,
Akshi,
by the senses.
by the senses.
Yea,
Yea,
those.
those,
Parahrita,
parahita,
missing at a distance.
missing at a distance.
Anta manasa,
Anatta,
of the internal mind.
of the internal mind.
Paresha,
Paresha,
O Supreme.
O Supreme.
Ato,
Ato,
therefore.
therefore,
Na,
na,
never.
never,
Pasyanti,
pasyanti,
can see.
can see.
Urugaya,
Urgaya,
O great.
O great.
Nunam,
Nuna,
but.
but,
Yea,
yea,
those who.
those who,
Te,
say,
your.
your,
Padanyasa,
paranyasa,
activity.
activities,
Vilasa,
vilasa,
transcendental enjoyment.
Transcendental enjoyments.
Lakshya,
Lakshya.
those who see.
Those who see.
Translation is, O great Supreme Lord, offensive persons whose internal vision has been too affected by external materialistic activities cannot see your lotus feet, but they are seen by your pure devotees whose one and only aim is to transcendentally enjoy your activities. So this is demigods are speaking, my understanding. Demigods are speaking. This is about what, 6 verses in a row where they're glorifying the Supreme Lord, specifically his lotus feet, in each verse, the demigods. And so they continue here, and I will read Srila Prabhupada's purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 18.61, the Lord 18.61. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart. It is natural that one should be able to see the Lord at least within himself, but that is not possible for those whose internal vision has been covered by external activities. The pure soul, which is symptomized by consciousness, can be easily perceived even by a common man because consciousness is spread all over the body. The yoga system, as recommended in Bhagavad Gita, is to concentrate the mental activities internally and thus see the lotus feet of the Lord within oneself. But there are many so-called yogis who have no concern with the Lord, but are only concerned with consciousness, which they accept as the final realization. Such realization of consciousness is taught by Bhagavad Gita within only a few minutes, whereas the so-called yogis take continuous years to realize it because of their offenses at the lotus feet of the Lord. The greatest offense is to deny the existence of the Lord as separate from the individual souls, or to accept the Lord and the individual soul as one and the same. The impersonalists misinterpret the theory of reflection, and thus they wrongly accept the individual consciousness as the supreme consciousness. The theory of the reflection of the Supreme can be clearly understood without difficulty by any sincere common man. When there is a reflection of the sky on the water, both the sky and the stars are seen within the water, but it is understood that the sky and the stars are not to be accepted on the same level. The stars are part of the sky, and therefore they cannot be equal to the whole. The sky is the whole, and the stars are parts. They cannot be one and the same. Transcendentalists who do not accept the supreme consciousness as separate from the individual consciousness are as offensive as the materialists who deny even the existence of the Lord. Such offenders cannot actually see the lotus feet of the Lord within themselves, nor are they even able to see the devotees of the Lord. The devotees of the Lord are so kind that they roam to all places to enlighten people in God consciousness. The offenders, however, lose the chance to receive the Lord's devotees, although the offenseless common man is at once influenced by the devotee's presence. In this connection, there is an interesting story of a hunter in Devarshi Narada. A hunter in the forest, although a great sinner, was not an intentional offender. He was at once influenced by the presence of Narada, and he agreed to take the path of devotion, leaving aside his hearth and his home. But the offenders, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, even though living amongst the demigods, had to undergo the punishment of becoming trees in their next lives, although by the grace of a devotee they were later delivered by the Lord. Offenders have to wait until they receive the mercy of devotees, and then they can become eligible to see the lotus feet of the Lord within themselves. but due to their offenses and their extreme materialism, they cannot see the devotees of the Lord, cannot even see the devotees of the Lord. Engaged in external activities, they kill the internal vision. The Lord's devotees, however, do not mind the offenses of the foolish in their many gross and subtle bodily endeavors. The Lord's devotees continue to bestow the blessings of devotion upon all such offenders without hesitation. That is the nature of devotees. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gnanjana Shulakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Padaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namah Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani Nirvachita Sunyavadi Pachachi Desatari. Hare Krishna. So there's a lot in this purport that I like, that I appreciate. Some things I don't quite understand fully, and but I was looking forward to going through this purport. So Prabhupada, it's a theme of this purport is like the distinction between the verse and the purport, the distinction between internal and external. So there's it speaks about internal vision, that so it indicates that we all have an internal vision that is available to us, but then it's covered by external activities. I'm reminded of like Dhritarashtra, who was like is born blind. He was born blind, like the leader of the Kauravas. He's born blind, but then it said he's also not just externally blind; he's also spiritually blind. That was worse than being, physically or materially blind. So there's some sort of internal vision that is available to us, and Prabhupada says that that's the yoga system is designed to like cultivate that internal vision. So there's a way to, Prabhupada said, it's natural that one should be able to see the Lord at least within himself, at least, so there's an internal vision in which we can see the Lord within ourselves. And that's the essence of the goal of the yoga process, is to concentrate the mental activities internally and thus see the lotus feet of the Lord within oneself. But then Prabhupada says that, okay, the danger, the downside, the yoga process is that it's easy to accept, to stop at just the consciousness. There's the symptom of consciousness, the symptom of the soul. The consciousness is spread through all out the body, and this consciousness, yes, this consciousness is to accept that consciousness is the final realization. That's a great offense. Prabhupada even says that it's the same as materialists who deny even the existence of the Lord. So there's a distinction between that sort of atheism of like there is no God, there is nothing. There is a distinction between that sort of atheism and then the sort of so-called theism that transcendentally accepts that there is a consciousness, there is spiritual consciousness. But if we're not accepting that the supreme consciousness is separate from the individual consciousness, that's as offensive as those who completely deny the existence of the Lord. So so this internal versus external. So yeah, we have Krishna's external and internal energy. Krishna's external energy is mostly that which we interact with on this material manifestation, what we know as of the material energy, or what we know as the material energy, is like Krishna's external energy. And then Krishna's internal energy, that's the supreme, that's the superior energy, the internal spirit. We just had Srimati Radharani's appearance day, and she's like a manifestation of she's a yeah, a manifestation of Krishna's internal energy, internal pleasure, potency, and and then we're the jiva souls that were in between. It's called described like marginal. We're on the marginal position, so that we can either take shelter in the internal energy or the external energy. That um, so it's like at the beach. That's what it's described. Like at the beach, there's the ocean. That's like the superior energy, and then the land, the beach itself, is the external energy, and then we're like the shoreline. Or well, the external energy is like the land, and then the marginal energy, us as jiva souls, we're like the beach, the shoreline there. That according to the tides, the waves, whatever, that we can sometimes the beach is covered by the ocean, and sometimes it's dry land. So that we're in that position that um, we can either be covered, or we can be in the internal energy or the external energy. And so that sounds kind of it's like, okay, how do we take shelter of Krishna's internal energy? And how do we cultivate that internal vision? And it's actually um, we can look at ourselves. We can look at ourselves. So actually, to do that, to talk about ourselves and our own internal and versus external. This is very common. This understanding of like, okay, that that whatever, that our inner life, our what's happening inside of us, is more important than like what's happening externally. At least, just to some extent, that's like common. At least personal growth, perhaps personal growth world, or those who have some sort of realization that it's like it's important to like cultivate the inner life. And or at least as you age, this becomes common. This becomes a realization for many people. I was just doing some research, and it was about the different stages of adult development. And so it's like there's a common knowledge of like the midlife crisis, which doesn't need to be a crisis. It could be a smooth transition and midlife transition, but it's common. It's a very common outcome for it to be a crisis, and that's because it's a transition of an era. It's a big transition of an era, and it's like because before that, many derive like their identity and their even their purpose from their youth. That's like just being young and identifying as young and the youth of the body or whatever is like enough to kind of keep yourself going, basically, and you can imagine, yeah, whenever you're younger, then these the external life is it can be more, at least illusorily enjoyable, perhaps. So like, and then it's like during that midlife time, it's like we can't identify with youth anymore. And so then for those that haven't cultivated some sort of inner life, some sort of uh, inner vision, inner cultivation, then this is a crisis. This is a crisis to be losing, the youth and that sort of like inherent identity and purpose that came with that. So, so yeah, so this, So, all right, so we'll switch. So I've got a tip from Mother Malini about to go to the light of the Bhagavat. Light of the Bhagavat is one of Prabhupada's books, and it specifically includes descriptions. It's from the Bhagavatam, and it's these wonderful descriptions of the season, the rainy season and the autumn. And so there's a part that I want to get to in the light of the Bhagavat that's related to this like internal and external energy of the jiva soul of the jiva. And to do that, I thought to just read a few verses that are coming up before the verse that we want to get to because it's such a wonderful uh, reading to do. And because it's about autumn, which we're in autumn now, and so I think it seems nice to read it. So this is the light of the Bhagavad, starting with the verse 29, text 29. Thus the rainy season came to an end, the autumn began, and there were no more clouds in the sky. All the reservoirs of water became crystal clear, and the wind was no longer forceful. Lord Krishna, along with his elder brother, Lord Baladev, lived at Vrindavan in this auspicious season. In autumn, all the reservoirs of water become enriched with growing lotuses. The muddy water again becomes normally clear and decorated, just as fallen conditioned souls once more become spiritually enriched in devotional service. The four prominent features of autumn are that there is no water in the sky, the weeds that grew here and there in the rainy season all wither away, the muddy roads and fields dry up, and the ponds of water become crystal clear. These four features of the autumn atmosphere are compared to the four orders of life. The beautiful white clouds, freed from all burdens of water distribution, float in midair, like mendicants freed from all family responsibilities. So that's so like yeah. Once we're freed from our family responsibilities, we can just float in midair like beautiful white clouds. It's something to look forward to. The Garuda is smiling about that. I think he's imagining himself with the beautiful white cloud floating around. There are waterfalls flowing from the hills of the forest, but sometimes water does not flow from them. So the waterfalls are not like ordinary waterfalls. They are compared to great reformers who speak or do not speak as the time requires. So the purport is very nice. Yeah, with that. Yes. Great reformers, they speak or not speak as the time requires. Okay, we'll continue. Small pools of water accumulate during the rainy season. In the autumn, they gradually dry up. The little creatures playing in those small pools do not understand that their days are now numbered and will end very soon. Thus, they are like foolish men who, not caring for the nearing day of their death, become absorbed in the so-called enjoyment of family life. When the small pools of water become too hot because of the scorching heat of the autumn sun, the poor small creatures with their many family members suffer terribly, as poor householders with too much family members suffer economic strains and yet go on begetting children because of uncontrolled senses. With the progress of the autumn season, the moist earth in muddy places begin to dry up and the green vegetation begins to fade. This drying up and fading resembles the gradual disappearance of the false sense of affinity and ego. With the inauguration of the autumn season, the rough sea becomes calm and quiet, just like a philosopher after self-realization, who is no longer troubled by the modes of nature. Okay, and this leads us to our verse of interest. So I won't continue, although it goes on. It goes on like that. It's very, very nice to read. So this is our verse of interest here. After the rainy season, the farmers begin to rebuild the partitioning walls of the paddy fields so that the water will be conserved, just as yogis try to use their conserved energy for self-realization. Okay, this is the purport. The living being is the marginal energy of the absolute personality of Godhead, and he can spend his conserved energy either externally or internally. When spent internally, the energy is identified with the internal energy of the personality of Godhead. But the same conserved energy, when spent for his external energy, is identified with that external energy. All energies, internal, external, and marginal, are emanations from him, the Supreme, and they act differently to prove diversity in unity. The unity is the Lord, and the energies represent diversity. The Lord is so powerful that he can do anything and everything merely by his sweet will alone. As mentioned above, everything is done by his energies in a natural way with full knowledge and complete perfection. That is the information we have from the Vedic literatures. And the Prabhupada goes on to speak, because I've mentioned about the the energy of Krishna, the internal energy, the external energy, and then we're the marginal energy. We're the marginal energy, but actually we're of the same superior quality. So that, but so the jiva soul is kind of made of is of the same quality of the internal energy, but the distinction is that we can become covered by the external energy. That's the distinction. So Prabhupada goes on here that because the living entity is classified as marginal energy and is of the same quality as the internal energy, it is quite natural for him to cooperate with the internal energy. But when the living entity prefers to cooperate with the external energy, he is put into difficulty. By the process called pratyahara, diversion, yoga diverts our energies from the external to the internal. The energy of our senses is meant to be diverted, not stopped. The senses are to be purified so that they serve the Lord instead of disturbing his settled harmony. So that's the process, is to divert the senses, divert the energy from the external to the internal. And so we can look at our own lives, our own internal versus external lives, and like some indication here. We can get some indication here that yes, uh, by cultivating our internal life, by our energy, by directing it internally to our own internal life, then it's like a step in the direction of identifying with the internal energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because our internal energy is made of the same quality, that spiritual energy, that the jiva soul. So we could think, our external life. So that's like, external things. Maybe we have, commonly speaking, maybe there's sort of external desires and external. I mean, we think be do have, right? We all know be do have here, everyone. So be do have. So the having is very obviously like external. So it's like, oh, it's very clear. Like, we don't want to be dependent on having anything for our like internal state. And then, um, being is like our internal experience, our inner life, our state of being. And then like the doing is actually interesting, because the doing is, you kind of be it can be like a bridge in between those. But anyway, externally could be like, first I need to have this ar, I need to have this house, I need to have this family, I need to have this money. That's like external life, and maybe we have external desires that are based. We're affected. Prabhupada says that internal vision has been covered by external activities. So maybe it's like we're allowing external pressures. This is kind of like foundational steps of self-empowerment, self-realization, personal growth, whatever. There's like to look at how much we're affected by external, like maybe my parents or society, the conditioning, like these expectations, these pressures that I feel externally, and I have this goal or this dream that I've had because that's what I think was expected of me, or that's what my would make my parents happy, or this sort of thing. And then it's like it's like a step to like go towards our internal, like, okay, well, what do I want? Aside from what I think will look good, or what I think will make others happy, or will get the external things. Like, what do I want? So that's like a step towards that like inner life. And yeah, that if we we spend our energy internally, then it's like a step towards identifying with the internal energy of the personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada mentioned this theory of the theory of reflection. I appreciate that. I don't understand it completely, because so I get like the reflection of the sky on the water. The sky and the stars are seen within the water, but it is understood that the sky and the stars are not accepted on the same level. So I don't quite grasping the full point that Srila Prabhupada is making there. I get that, yeah, that if we take the reflection that we're like reflections of the Supreme. So if we take that the reflection is, on the same level as the original entity that's being reflected, and that's a mistake. I don't quite get that full paragraph there, but I'll move on. Perhaps we could, Mother Molly or someone else can give their report there. But and then Prabhupada goes on about, so this purport's big on offenders. What's offensive? What is offensive, and how these offensive um, actions contaminate our internal vision and our inner life, our inner experience. So, and Prabhupada mentions this story about Narada and the hunter. So, and he talks about the role of the devotees. The devotees of the Lord are so kind they can roam to all places to enlighten people in God consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada is doing that. He did that. He's continues to do that through his books, being distributed by his devotees. I saw that Prabhupada's books are in Antarctica. Even they have like a post in Antarctica. They set up a camp there. So all the continents of the globe, Srila Prabhupada has visited. There's a Murti. I think there's a picture of his Murti there. So so this is like he's talking about like pure devotees. He mentions Narada Muni, and of course Srila Prabhupada was on that level. Did you want to say something, Damayanti?
No, I guess I accidentally unmuted.
Hare Krishna. You're here. You're credited with being here. Good. All right. So yeah, speaking about these like pure devotees, and then also all the devotees, all the devotees of the Lord, have this potency, and this is part of the mission, Lord Chaitanya's mission, for all devotees to do like this, to travel, roam to all places to enlighten people in God consciousness, and what else? Yeah, to enlighten the offenders, to enlighten the offenders, at least the innocent ones, um, and to offenders have to wait until they receive the mercy of the devotees. So the devotees are traveling, ready to give the mercy. Um, the Lord's devotees, however, do not mind the offenses of the foolish in their many gross and subtle bodily endeavors. The Lord's devotees continue to bestow the blessings of devotion upon all such offenders without hesitation. That is the nature of devotees. So I know that devotees here, Ruda and Damayanti, going on book distribution, and Padini Shakti in Czech Republic, book distribution, and going on the Padayatra. Mother Malini's done a lot of traveling in her time, and Dear Govinda's traveled to Denver right now. And so this is the mood of the devotee. This is the role of the devotees, is to be sharing this mercy even with especially with those offenders. And then Prabhupada makes a distinction between like the innocent, a non-intentional offender. So someone like Mugari the hunter. So the story of Mugari the hunter, um, yeah, I have a few stories that came to mind that I like that just recently. And the story of Narada Mugari the hunter is very near and dear to my heart. And there's so many different these pastimes, these stories that we get from Srila Prabhupada, from the Vedas. There's so many layers. There's so many lessons, and of course, it's like a real history. So there's just like that fact of history and pastime. And there's so many layers and so many things to get from them. So here, Srila Prabhupada's um, emphasizing the fact that the hunter, Mugari the hunter, was not an intentional offender. He was somewhat innocent. That's whenever so Mugari was, in the forest. It's I was mentioning this story of Mugari the hunter because it's like a story I've heard like so many times. Like it's actually one of the first stories I've ever heard for Krishna consciousness, and it's probably the story maybe I've heard the most. I don't know, and I think Dear Govinda telling this story many times. But then how there's still something fresh and alive, and I sometimes I would be like, oh God, I don't want to hear the story again. It's like, oh, the same story, or I know this story, I know that. There's that the three most dangerous words in self-realization, personal growth. Like, I know that. Oh, I know this story. I don't want to, hear it again. But then if we really allow ourselves to like be with these stories and hear them freshly, then it's like, yeah, new realization, new layers come and deeper levels of realization come when we get immersed in the story more. So I really the story of Narda and the hunter is very much like that for me. Um, so Magari the hunter, he's just like killing animals, like torturing animals, really. He's not even killing them completely. He's like just cutting off part of their limbs or and just kind of leaving them for dead. And it's like it's like fun for him. But when he's confronted by Narada Muni, his innocence is that he says he's like, well, what do you mean? Like this is just he doesn't. He, this is like what I learned from my father. This is what I like to do. What's wrong with this? So there's like an innocence and a humility there, and because he was just a common hunter, you know, who was he? Just a common hunter, and Prabhupada makes a distinction between that pastime in which uh, Narada he was so influenced by the devotee's presence. So like that's like a perfect platform for to be affected and influenced by the devotee's presence because he immediately took to Narada Muni's instruction. Not quite immediately. He needed to be shown some things and coached and seen an alternate perspective and everything. But he took to Narada Muni's instruction. And then making a distinction between that and Nalakuvara and Manigriva, who were living amongst the demigods, and they had to undergo punishment. I'm not quite remembering the story exactly, but they're like enjoying with women and maybe it was Narada Muni also. Someone can confirm. I don't know. I think it was with Narada Muni also. Um, but they were like enjoying with women and like naked in the water in the pond or whatever the river, and they didn't show proper respect, and so they were punished. They didn't like cover themselves or they're like so then they were like demigods, so they were punished to become trees, but still they get delivered by the Lord because they're the trees in Krishna's pastimes, the twin Arjuna trees that Krishna pulls over in his in a kind of Damodrosticum pastime after he's tied up, which we're coming into Kartik soon. So we'd be very much into that Damodrosticum pastime where, yeah, Krishna allows himself as a punishment. Mother Yashoda is punishing him for being naughty, stealing the butter, and he allows himself to be bound by his mother's love. And and then after he's tied up and bound by his mother, as a sort of punishment, then pulls he pulls the mortar, whatever he's tied to, and it knocks over these two trees, which are Nalakuvara and Manigriva. So I want to share more about this pastime Mugari the hunter, just because why not? And so I can remember that, like I mentioned, there's so many different ways of looking at it. So here Prabhupada's mentioned, talking about the how by not being an intentional offender, then there's like a space that Mugari is so influenced by the devotee Narada's presence. That's what Prabhupada is emphasizing here. And then I can remember that I mentioned that it's like one of the first stories I heard. And I actually remember it was before I even chanted Hare Krishna or anything like that. I think I knew the devotees, or I'd been associated with the devotees to some extent, but I hadn't chanted or anything, maybe just taking prasadam. And I had this friend who I was in South Florida, and he was a friend, and I guess he had spent time with the devotees, and so he knew this story of the hunter and Narada Muni, but like the way he described it, the way he told the story was like this far out thing of like he really emphasized how like because part Narada's instruction to Mogari the hunter was ultimately he gave the process of worshiping the Tulasi plant. Just like I have a simple program and and worship the Tulasi plant, in the forest there, because he lived in the forest. And so the way this person like told the story was he really emphasized that part about how like he just he recommended that he just be in the forest with the Tulasi plant, and that's how he gained enlightenment and spiritual purification. And it was kind of like this like trippy thing of like plant medicine, or like like just worship this holy plant, and then it's like alters your consciousness, and like he was kind of told it from that angle. And at the time it was like it hit me exactly where I was like it met me where I was at. I was like, whoa, that's far out. Just worship a plant in the forest, and it's like plant medicine or something. So he didn't emphasize any of this other part. And then just lately is actually a PPTC class where Dear Govinda was telling the story, like I said, told it so many times, but for whatever reason, this really sunk in. This even more so than this innocence was this like this concept of like legacy coming from our parents, that like this hunter, this is like this is what he this is what he knew from his parents. This is what he knew from his father. And so I was thinking about this in our culture, in our time, that yeah, it's like it's so degraded. You can think like, oh, just hacking off some limbs, and like that's so degraded, it's so evil. But it's like for him, it's like maybe he had fond memories of doing that with his father. Maybe he had like it's like warm and fuzzy feelings. Like, yeah, I was 6 years old. My father would take me out into the forest, and we just hack animals together. And he was happy. He got pleasure from it. I was happy to see my dad happy, and it's just a good time. And like this, of course, this happens. This happens today. That people I know many people I grew up with, and people around this area that that it's like, yeah, it's a fun time to go hunting, go kill a deer, and maybe cut off the head, and skin it, and whatever, all these things that like that's like a warm and fuzzy memory. That's like good quality time with my dad, and even my, the whole family would go, and just like warm memory. I want to pass that on to my children because that's a good time. So it really, like, for me, highlighted this concept of like the legacy that we're like taking, and this whole process, that we sattvato, about looking at our uh, what are we doing with our lives, and we're doing it unconsciously. And so, yeah, whether it's something like that or just some sort of communication habit or relationship habit, or uh, that we're like raising awareness and raising consciousness. And then I just thought of two other stories that I thought, why not tell? Actually, Rohini asked me about this story last night. We'll close with these couple of stories. Rohini asked me about this story last night about the illiterate Brahmana in South India who's reading Bhagavad Gita. And so I'll just read this from Prabhupada. Here's Prabhupada telling this story. Okay. When Lord Chaitanya was traveling in South India in a big temple, Ranganath temple, he went to see the deity, and he saw one Brahmana was reading Bhagavad Gita, and people were joking him, "Oh, Mr. Brahmana, how you are reading Bhagavad Gita?" Because they were the neighbors, they knew that this Brahmana was illiterate, and he was studying Bhagavad Gita, so they were joking. But the Brahmana did not care them. He was taking the book, and in his own way he was reading. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw this incident. He came to the Brahmana. So he asked the Brahmana, "My dear Brahmana, what are you reading?" So he could understand this person's not joking with me. He is serious. So he explained, "My dear sir, I am reading Bhagavad Gita. Unfortunately, I am illiterate. I do not know even the alphabet." "Why are you reading Bhagavad Gita?" So he said that my spiritual master knows that I am illiterate, but still he has asked me to read Bhagavad Gita. What can I do? Therefore, I have taken this book. I am seeing simply. I do not know how to read. "Oh, that's all right. You cannot read, but I see that you are crying. How you are crying if you are not reading?" "Yes, I am crying. Of course there is cause. What is that? As soon as I take this Bhagavad Gita, I remember Krishna. Krishna is sitting as driver, and Arjuna is hearing. I have heard the story. I know something of the instruction, but cannot read. So as soon as I take this book, this picture comes before me, and I simply think, oh, how Krishna is nice, that he has become a charioteer of his devotee. He is so great. Still, he has accepted a menial service of his devotee. This gives me so much pleasure that I cry." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced him. "Your Bhagavad Gita reading is perfect. You have taken the essence." So this is the thing. If you simply remember Krishna is teaching Arjuna and Arjuna is hearing, if you simply remember the picture, that is sufficient, even if you think you cannot read. So this is, beautiful pastime, and it's so, like, one obvious. I think Rohini was asking about this pastime last time. It was like emphasizing the point about that. Yeah, you don't even need to read. You don't need to be a scholar. You don't need to really understand the philosophy. Just have that mood of this Brahmana that's just like so moved with devotional feeling of imagining of seeing Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield, and just that the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna, like, that's Bhagavad Gita. That's it. Like that's all we need. That there's, yeah, devotee and his friend, and but Krishna's supreme personality Godhead, but he's taking this menial position of his servant. Like that's all we need. Um, and then, but then, like, another point another point about this pastime is that this Brahmana is following his spiritual master's instruction, even though it doesn't make sense, or even though, like, maybe it doesn't make sense on one level, like, and he's even undergoing, being mocked, you know People are laughing at him. He doesn't know how to read, and even maybe in his mind, he's like, "Why is my spiritual master ordering me? I can't read. Why is he asking me to read the Bhagavad Gita?" But he's all those objections. He's still just following the instruction of his spiritual master, and I think this came up on Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja. I remember that in one of the devotees, maybe it was Teja Prakash. I can't remember Teja Prakash Prabhu, but it was something to the extent of like, Nalini Kanta shared the pastime of like how the Ratha Yatra carts that the devotees thought it was a good idea to change the Ratha Yatra carts to metal wheels instead of the wood. And Prabhupada's like, no, it's been wood for thousands of years. Keep it as the wood. And so maybe and that's the instruction from the spiritual master. And then I think in Teja Prakash's purport, he said something to, like, it was from Prabhupada, but Prabhupada was saying that, like, even if the devotee, the pure devotee, maybe the guru, whatever, even if his uh, what he says is like seemingly wrong, then Krishna will arrange so that he's right. Even if it's like seemingly wrong, something to that extent. I can't remember the words, but Krishna will arrange that his devotees are right. So it's like, okay, maybe on some scientific realm, you could go that the metal wheels are just better and like it should have worked, but it didn't work. Like the metal wheels like broke down, the cart broke down, and they because they didn't follow. So that was my realization that it's like the process is not like follow the spiritual master's instruction because it's the right instruction. That is true. The spirit like that, there's truth in that. The spiritual master's instruction is the right thing to do and is the correct thing to do. It's the best thing to do, whatever, like that. But that's not really the reason for following the instruction. The reason for following the instruction is because it's like it's a relationship, and I'm showing my love and my surrender, and by doing that, and then all things are taken care of after that. So that's some realization, some understanding I have. Realization means I would be acting on it, but it's some insight or whatever that I've received, especially from this past time. And since we're talking about pastimes with Lord Chaitanya and Brahmanas, I thought to just share one more that's not really related, but why not share? That's also there was a Brahmana that just very, very touching. Similarly, it's for me, it's like in the same vein of like this, emotional mood connected with the pastimes. There was this Brahmana um, who Lord Chaitanya visited, also in South India, I think, yeah, South India, and invited Chaitanya Mahaprabhu his home for lunch. But like the Brahmana was like fasting, and he wasn't taking he wasn't going to break his fast, and he was very morose and like troubled, distressed, and so it's like so we can think like if you find someone we have we're morose or we're distressed, we're troubled, we're feeling bad. What kind of things are we concerned with? You can imagine what might be a topic like, oh, what's happening? Why are you so upset? Oh, this interpersonal problems with coworkers, my job, or oh, I just got this bad news, or, whatever it may be. For this Brahmana, his distress was that because Srimati Sita Devi, the mother of Sita, Ramachandra, Lord Ramachandra's wife Sita, had been touched by that demon Ravana. So in the pastime of the Ramayana, this demon Ravana steals away Sita and takes her, like captures her. So he's this in Ravana is a big demon, uh, and so he's so troubled because Sita, Rama's Lord Ram's Sita has been touched by this demon, and he just he's morose about this. So there's just like this transcendental, you know, emotion. And then and then uh and then Lord Chaitanya consoles him and gives a spiritual perspective that um Sita Devi, the dearmost wife of the Supreme Lord Brahmachandra, certainly has a spiritual form full of bliss. No one can see her with material eyes, for no materialist has such power. To say nothing of touching Mother Sita, a person with material senses cannot even see her. When Ravana kidnapped her, he kidnapped only her material, illusory form. As soon as Ravana arrived before Sita, she disappeared. Then, just to cheat Ravana, she sent an illusory material form. Spiritual substance is never within the jurisdiction of the material conception. This is always the verdict of the Vedas and the Puranas. So he gives that perspective that it was actually illusory Sita. It was an illusory form of Sita, not her original form. And then later he finds some more proof of this, like Lord Chaitanya finds some more like sastric proof in some sort of text, and he comes back to that Brahmana to like, look, here's the proof. He's like, um, and to relieve this Brahmana of his distress. So that's why not tell that story? I like this story. Hare Krishna. Those are my thoughts and things that I wanted to share. I welcome up for any. See, Anasuya has her hand raised. I welcome any questions or comments this time.
Hi, Krishna. Thank you so much for class and discussion now to follow. And so two things struck me as you were sharing, and I loved all the stories. But the first is the story about the hunter and like coming from, like Narada Muni was seeing him from more the childlike, part of like, this is just the way I want to. I don't know anything different. This is what I enjoy doing with my father. And I was just thinking how appropriate the timing is. As you said, it's hunting season. And where I work, it's very much the discussion around the office. And it's also very much like prominent, like there's a TV in the break room and someone's camera is up there showing like the deer that's in the area and that they're all excited about. And so I used to be really offended by that and would leave the room. And now I feel like you've given me a different perspective, like just to like be more tolerant, like there's more tolerance, like because I don't know. So when you said, and you said the other sharing is, I know that's the three famous words in Savatove training. It's like, I don't know what's really going on for that person. Like what is the relationship that they have of maybe they do enjoy this with their family members and this is how they bond. And so I'm really appreciating that. I just giving more tolerance and just more love, and like just not coming from a place of you're wrong and I'm right. Like that's where I can go to very easily, very quickly. And they know I'm a vegetarian. They know that I don't want to see a dead deer or their trophies from hunting. So they're respectful of that. But I don't need to also like say it's wrong. Like I don't need to say that. I have my beliefs and they know my beliefs. So, but yeah, I'm just appreciating that to be more loving and being more present for them and not judging. So that's what I got out of your class this morning. So thank you for that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I hear like, you're not maybe like an internal or like some like condemnation of them, like you're moved to like to go beyond that to like maybe more understanding or maybe some openness and then because it's like Narada Muni he's inquiring, he inquired from the hunter, like what are you doing, and he's asking questions and hearing from the hunter, and then but it's not just he's like, oh, okay, accepted that, he of course uh he gave spiritual perspectives and he showed them like the results, like Um, I'm thinking more now. There's so many different versions of the story. I'm thinking of the children's story, the children's book that I read to my kids, and yeah, in that version, that telling, then he's like, yeah, he's showing, yeah, here's like these, you like to do this with your family. It's from your father. Well, what about the family of these animals? You know, here's these animals lost their, lost their mother, lost their father, whatever. And then I think Narada heals the animals himself, and then and then he also shows him like, and here's your next birth. Here's your next birth because of now you're being chased by the lions. Now you're being hunted by the humans. You're an animal and you're being hunted. So he shows them like the effects. So so yeah, I don't know what that looks that would look like for you with these hunters, but it's like yeah, that's the mood. But I hear like yeah, to move beyond some sort of I'm right and they're wrong. That's like a opens up a space for you with your these people that you associate with. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Hare Krishna.
Someone there at Bhakti Yoga Programs.
Yeah, Garuda wanted to share something. I wanted to share something in response to Anansuya's comment, is that Narada Muni, he felt compassion, a lot of compassion towards the hunter, extreme compassion. And then he showed him all the perspective you express, Parampara Prabhu. And the hunter came to a realization, oh, I didn't know it was wrong. He was very innocent like that. And he realized, oh, I didn't know it was wrong. And now that I'm realizing it's wrong, I'm not going to do it anymore. And I'm worried, I'm concerned. How will I maintain my family? How, all those things. So Narada Muni was in such a way with his compassion and wisdom that the hunter himself realized that, like what Narada Muni was sharing really, is that what he was doing was wrong. But Narada Muni never came from a place, you're right, I'm wrong, or, no, you're wrong, I'm right, or judgment, or tension, or anything. He came from a spirit of inquiry, discovery, giving space to the hunter to kind of reveal himself. And then, of course, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And then he really felt the care of Narada Muni. It wasn't about judgment. It was really feeling so much compassion. And of course, a moment of association with a pure devotee has the power to deliver us all. So I imagine that had an effect on Megari's hunter, that he was in contact with a pure devotee. Garuda have a question.
Like, can I just make a comment about that? What Melanie was saying, just the compassion of Narada Muni towards Magari the hunter, and it's like that we can cultivate some of that of like yeah, it's like seeing someone. It's like we're not punished for sin, we're punished by sin. So it's like yeah, seeing someone who's living some sort of sinful life, or it's like yeah, to be like that compassion of like, oh, what's happening for them, or like wanting to like see them relieved of their suffering, like yeah, to go on sinning, to go on like you know hurting myself, hurting others. It's like yeah, that spirit soul is going to be you know uh receive so much karma, and it's like that sort of compassion. That's what I was inspired by. Garuda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Parampara, Prabhu. Thank you for your class. There's two like main things that I want to touch base on. I'll stay with this theme of really appreciating Mother Anasunya's process and really coming to a place of compassion, not really knowing fully what the story is behind her. I think it was her coworker she was speaking to. That's what I was hearing.
Yeah.
But, and their, love of the experience of, hunting deer. I could relate to that personally, just kind of looking at my experience growing up. My mom would take me fishing all the time, and we would stay up all night long fishing, like all night long till the sun rose, and just like being out in nature. And fishing was part of it, but it was more like just loving being with my mom for that long, and her like willingness to be with me, like in that just in that experience in life, and just how like fond of memories I have of that. And then also I have memories of like, feeling like, even though we were catching fish and we were eating them, but I saw fishermen, like they would catch something, and if they thought it was garbage fish, they didn't want to eat it, they would just throw it on the pier and let it die. So it was like all this like, different levels of like, fishermen are doing it for fun, they throw the fish back. So there's all different levels of consciousness there, and also connection to like the fish themselves. Speaking to this pastime, I was like looking at like, there's Narada Muni giving him the transcendental knowledge, showing the hunter the consequences of his actions, like visually taking him through a visual experience of his consequences in the future. And then also giving him so much empathy and compassion, which I imagine, my experience of being in the world, there's a lack of empathy and compassion here in this day and age. I don't know what was happening then, but I would imagine there was probably still that going on then. So just that in itself was probably so profound to the hunter, because a lot of people probably like treated him like, yeah, you're evil, or this guy, they probably had a lot of judgment toward the hunter. I'm imagining, I'm just speculating here. So just being someone coming into your space and giving you like empathy and compassion is like such a powerful experience, to where like you almost naturally like open up, like your heart naturally opens. And then I was like feeling into like, I don't know why, but today I had this visualization, I was seeing, Narada Muni, like seeing the animals and feeling so much love and compassion and almost like pain of what the animals was going through. And then the hunter, like being in disconnect of that, like the hunter is like disconnected of the pain and suffering that the animals are going through. And I'm wondering, in my mind, I had this imagery of Narada Muni like taking the hunter and putting his hands on his heart, and then putting his hands on the animal, like and helping the hunter really feel the energy, really feel the effects of the suffering that he's causing, because there's a disconnect there. Because I mean, we can use our mind to like, give somebody information to like, give them an alternate perspective, right? But do they really get it? Does it really hit home? Does it really touch their heart? Like, what is that process? And so for some reason today, I had that visualization of like, the hunter and the animal, like really like seeing and feeling like the animal was suffering, him really being like impacted by like, I can see the suffering now. Because I'm thinking about my own self, my own life, where I used to catch fish and eat them, and there was a disconnect there when I go to clean the fish, and there was kill the fish and clean the fish, and I think it would like completely shock me now, since I've had so much separation from that experience. Like I feel like I could really enter the fish's world and the fish's experience now, whereas before, when I was younger, in that like being covered, and being disconnected too, like from like empathy and compassion for something other than a human being. There's like this culture, this way that we become conditioned or disconnected from like our natural world, as like that's a part of me as well. And like it's experiencing pain, however I interact with it, or joy, however I interact with it. Like coming to more like a conscious awareness and also a physical, mental, emotional connection. There's two. So I was really kind of appreciating that this morning, just kind of sitting with that, and yeah, appreciated where you went with being passed on through lineages, and then that conditioning or that disconnect is there. Instead of like a parent giving to a child, look at the animal, see the animal it's affected by us, touch the animal and see how it reacts to how we interact with it, just bringing that like awareness there. Like so many people just go to the store and buy meat. That's a completely disconnect from like going and hunting an animal. There's a whole different experience there, so I don't know, I'm just kind of like really appreciating where this is going. So that's one thing. You can respond to that if you have anything to share. But the other thing, I have another thing that I wanted to touch base on, but did you have anything to share?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the other thing had to do with internal energy and external energy. And today, for some reason, I was like feeling into like, you mentioned the analogy of the shoreline. And so like thinking of myself, like sitting on the shoreline, what does it look like to be the ocean over me and then the ocean's, away from me just sitting on the sand. And I was like feeling into like internal energy. I'm imagining is like connected to the authentic self, and then also like connected to my creator, the super soul, Krishna. And then externally, when the sea is out away from me, externally, I'm in my vehicle, I'm in my false identification of myself. Like the character, Gaetano, is sitting there in all his, ideas and feelings and traumas, like disconnected from the internal self. Would you, because I've never really like heard it like in that context, and is this speculation? Like, am I like, is this like, does this make sense? Like, is that how we can be in the internal energy and the external energy?
Yeah, I like to hear Melanie respond to that. But yeah, I want to just appreciate that where you're going, and it's kind of what I was one thing I was how you're like taking the pastime just regarding the hunter and like really putting yourself into the pastime, and that's something I appreciate about these stories, and like your realizations that are coming from it, and yeah, I personally resonate. Yeah, my perhaps it's philosophical, maybe hopefully it's permissible philosophical speculation, but yeah, but like what you're describing, like have it going within internally to my internal life, my authentic self, my then naturally like the spirit soul is there. That's the spirit soul is there internally, and then Paramatma is sitting like right next to me in my heart. So yeah, that's now that's still distinct from Krishna's internal energy, the internal energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but at the same time, it's like moving in that direction. I wonder if Malini will comment.
Thank you, Parampara. I really like the way Garuda Prabhu you describe. It's just like we are part of the internal energy of the Lord. We are spirit. We are just like Parampara said, we are susceptible to be covered by the external energy, but we are, Prakriti. We are part of the internal energy of the Lord. And then when we identified as eternal servant of Krishna as a soul, then we are in the ocean. We are swimming in the ocean, and no matter what's happening externally or connecting with the external, it's we are staying connected with the internal energy of the Lord. And then when we identified with the vehicle, like you were saying, when we are identified with all the upadis, all the I am, mine, all, like connecting with this body in this lifetime, anything that connected with that, then we are an external energy. And so we are in a sense, the jiva is marginal just because it can be covered. But really the jiva is really part of the ocean.
It has
All
the
right.
ability to be covered.
It has the ability to be covered. It has the potential to be covered through its free will, really. And that leads me to a question I wanted to ask Parampara. So, internal life, it can be seen in so many ways. And, like like you gave example of the external life, like the thing we have, the jobs, the family, all that external. And then one could think like, oh, so my thoughts are internal, or my emotion are part of my internal, or my opinion is internal, my judgment is internal. Could you speak to that?
Yeah. Well,
Because not external, it's inside
well,
of me.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I was maybe giving some philosophical speculation that that yes, ultimately, if we're going to our inner world, which includes our thoughts and feelings and inner experiences, and we're going in that internally in a in a spirit of self-realization to ultimately realize who we are, that spiritual spark, then then eventually then the goal is to connect with the soul, the spirit soul, and then Paramatma is there. Then I would say uh then I would think that that's what I was speculating, is that that's like it's at least a step in the direction of the internal energy of Krishna's internal energy, because we're making a distinction between um, external and internal. But then so then internal, internal of what? What's the dividing line between internal and external? So then there's the mind, the intelligence, the senses, and the spirit soul. So then we can make further distinctions about um, internal, because on a maybe one level, maybe one distinction is that our thoughts, our emotions, that's more internal. It's like part of the inner life compared to external things. But then like for the spirit soul, that's still external, like the material mind, the material senses, the material the material mind, that's external. So then there's like further distinctions. That's my response.
Thank you.
Damayanti, you'd like to give a closing comment or whatever, question, whatever?
Thank you all for being here. No, I wanted to ask one thing. I liked something you said I never thought of. Regarding do have, that you said doing is like the bridge between being and having. I never thought of it as a bridge, and I was thinking about the three modes of nature and how there's like kind of two ways to look at them, where if you're like in the mode of ignorance, then and you want to get to the mode of goodness, you can get into mode of passion to get some energy moving. Like there's like inertia and then getting some energy moving and getting into the being. Anyway, I'm just thinking about the bridge, and then there's the other direction where from a place of being you naturally do something from being, and then you have what you have based on being. I don't know. Maybe that's always true. like be do I think one time I heard be do have is always the paradigm, because whatever state of consciousness you're in, you're doing what that state of consciousness does, and you have what that state of you have that experience, you know. Anyway, I'm interested in the bridge comment if you have anything more to say
Yeah.
about it.
Well, I had more to say about that, but it was sort of like exploratory. That's why I didn't say much more because yeah, it's like an exploratory thing for me because I don't know if I'll go there. We'll go there now, already 9:35. But yeah, I was making the distinction between having is obviously external, and then like being is internal, and then yes, like the doing is like yeah, I said it was like a bridge between that. I don't have too much else to say, but and yeah, also there's like the paradigm of like first you bow down, then you feel, right? So that's like that by just committing to some action, and then some external action, some action, maybe it's external, and then the internal um you know experience arises from that action. So that's like do be, like, and then maybe having's not important, so maybe there's also a do be paradigm. So anyway, that's like exploratory discussions. I don't have too much to say about that. Hi Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Bye.
Haribol.
Thank you very much, Parampara Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Hi Krishna.